Daf is Daf Yudchet 18 in Masechet Sotah, and we are discussing what you write on this Megillah and what you do with the process. So we said yesterday, we talked about how the writing really matters and it has to be similar in some ways to a Sefer Torah, similar to a get. Someone mentioned yesterday, which is correct. You have to have sirtut, and it has to be written probably for her. So it says the Gemara on the top of. We are 5 lines from the top of Daf Yudchet Amud Aleph. Boy Rava, third word from the end of the line. Katav shtei megilot l'shtei sotot. Let's say there's 2 sotot together, or it doesn't have to be together, but they're both there. They do the procedure. They write a Megillah for each one, but machkan l'toch kos echad. They rub them out into 1 cup. Maybe they were short on cups or something, or they were short on water. I don't know, but they put them into 1 cup, right? Mahu. And then, of course, the assumption then is you pour them back into 2 cups because you got to give them. So I don't know why they did it. Whatever reason, they did it into 1 cup. They were waiting for the second one to arrive, and then they were going to give each sotah to drink. So what do you say? Is that obviously you wrote it for her? We assume you have to write it l'shma, like it says v'katav la. You write it for her. You erased it even for her, but then you mix them together after you erased it. So is that a problem or not? So ask the Gemara, you got to write it for her. You did write it for her. You might also need the mechika to happen in 1 cup for her, right? So since you erased both of them into 1 cup, that's not, each one doesn't have their own space. So imtim salomer, if you're going to say, which usually means that we adopt the position that ba'ina nami mechika l'shma, you in fact need to erase it into a cup for her sake. So you need to have 2 separate cups. You write 2 gittin for not gittin, 2 sefer sotah for 2 sotot. You erase it into the cup. Then what happens if you mix the cups together? What if you're machkan b'shtei kosot? You erase it into 2 separate cups, one for sotah A and one for sotah B. V'chazar v'irvan. But then they get mixed back together again. They forget which one is A and that's obviously a more likely scenario, right? You forget which one is for A and which one is for B. So someone comes up with a great idea. Let's mix them together, right? Now that's not a great idea because each one has to drink something. So then they re-separate them. So the question is, Mahu. It's a very interesting question. You need to erase it for her, which you did. How do you know if she's drinking the right one? Right? She might be drinking the wrong waters. It says the Gemara. Now, this is this is if they're drinking out of the same cup, right? They're not each drinking out of their own cup. What if you did what I just said? Sorry, I accelerated the cases. What if you're chazar b'chilkan? You go and you separate them, mahu. So this, I'll give the summary because I'm glad. Sorry, I know we're getting the times all contrived here, so I apologize. That's sort of my fault. But the complicated case here is that you basically for a sotah, you have to write the Megillah. We discussed yesterday what they write exactly, 3 psukim, 4 psukim, 2 psukim basically. Then you erase it into the water. Then you give it to her to drink. Now we established so far today, we're halfway down the daf almost, not that much, but that you have to erase it for her sake. You have to write it for her sake. Katav la, it has to be written for that particular sotah. You can't have a few of them ready to go, right? You have to erase it for her sake. So it can't just be that it's erased into a cup and you don't know which one was erased into the cup. And then she has to drink from a cup that's her own, essentially. But the final question we have is what if, again, this case is really important because it has tremendous practical implications, according to some. What if you took the 2 shtarei sotah, you erase them each into cup A and cup B. Each sotah has her own cup, but then you mix them into each other, and then you separated them, right? So you mix them together, your irvev, and then you separated them. And it's like, you had a smoothie, and you gave 1 cup to sotah A, 1 cup to sotah B. What do you say in that case? So what would you think? So this is very complicated. The reason it's very complicated is because there's a lot of ways to look at it, right? But one way to look at it is that there is presumably, the sotah doesn't have to drink the whole cup, right? Just drink some of the cup. So presumably within any cup of water, if you take 2 cups of water and you mix them together, if you could somehow differentiate those water molecules, right? They get mixed together. There's no chance that anyone would assume that that's perfectly separate, right? That you then separate them, you've got all the water from A and all the water from B, right? Obviously, they're mixed together. The question is that enough or not? So the Gemara, that's my interpretation, the way I'm explaining the Gemara. Ask the Gemara, Mahu, yesh breira o ein breira. Do you say that you can actually re-differentiate, re-separate the water to some extent or not? Now, Tosas points out here, this is why I said it's very practical. Tosas points out here, right? The principle of breira, I'll just remind everyone, we've discussed it many times, but one of the great cases of breira is the case where it's about to be, we had this many times this case as well, Shabbos is about to start, or Yom Tov is about to start, let's say Shabbos is about to start, and you realize that you don't have any fresh wine, any kosher wine, sorry, to put it that way. You have an unkoshered bottle of wine. By unkosher, I mean you didn't take off Truma and Maser yet, right? So an undrinkable bottle of wine, it's Tevel. So you're not allowed to take off Truma on Shabbat, but you can take off, what you do is, right, let's just say you can't take off Truma on Shabbat, or you can't separate it, but right before Shabbat, you say, one portion of wine in this barrel should be Truma, and the rest I'll drink. And then all Shabbat, you drink from the barrel, you just have to leave behind a small portion, and after Shabbat, you take out that portion, which say 1/50th, and you give it to the Kohen. So the whole Shabbat, there was Truma in the barrel, but you're a Yisrael, you can't drink Truma, right? But you didn't drink it. You drank the rest of the barrel. And of course, the Gemara points out you can't drink the whole barrel, right? Obviously, then you're drinking the Truma. But as long as you don't drink the whole barrel, that's the principle of Yesh Breira. It's a machloket, very big, very many opinions. Some say Yesh Breira, that after the fact, you can say that the portion that I took out on Sunday was the portion that I made Truma, even though there's nothing distinguishing about that bit of wine. And there's another opinion that holds you Ein Breira. Tosfos points out that if you thought that that was what we're talking about here, it would have tremendous, and these are not practical, implications. Because if it was true that Breira extended to things after the fact, right, meaning you had cup A for Sotah A, cup B for Sotah B, and you mixed them together and then separated them, and you could say, well, we magically separated them so that there's A and B, then Tosfos doesn't say these words, but I got a great solution for any kind of non-kosher thing in the world, right? You can go to the store, you can cook your kosher food in a non-kosher pot, right? Of course, the non-kosher stuff gave it a little bit of taste. When you're done, take out one spoonful and say, this is the treif, I'll put it on the side, and everything else is kosher, right? If you could somehow do that. Well, Tosfos says, obviously, it's not what Breira means. Breira means that as long as nothing has defined the truma, it could be suspended until the later time when you take off the truma. And therefore, in this case, you can't say anything like that because this is already defined as Sotah A and Sotah B water. So it's already defined. You can't undefine it using Breira. The Tosfos understands that the word Breira here doesn't mean what it usually means. And here it just means, did you separate it to such an extent that you could say now it's water of A and water of B, or do you say that it's completely mixed together and therefore there's no individual identity? But clearly he doesn't think that principle of Breira would apply after you've already defined something. So it's just a borrowed term. Of course, not everyone agrees with Tosfos. There's a lot of discussion about how far you can take Breira, which would have tremendous implications. We don't rely on that heter, take out one spoonful and say that was the cheese, right? So you can't do that. Continues the Gemara Sotah. Amar Rabbi Zera, we are around halfway down, really smack in the middle of the daf, right after the word teko. Said Rabbi Zera Amar Rav, Shnei Shvuot Hamurot B'Sotah Lama. Right, it says by the Sotah, we read the psukim yesterday. It said, I don't have them in front of me, but Nava's got them. It says 2 times. In the beginning of the first pasuk, it says that he makes Hashbia Otah. You have it somewhere? I'm going to try to find them. I don't see them. Okay, well, we've got psukim anyways. So it says, you don't have them here. It says Hashbia Otah. We probably have them here. Here we go. Okay, pasuk. It's not pasuk aleph, but okay. Hishpia ota. Sorry, it's Bamidbar Hey pasuk yotet. The hashpia ota kohen. The kohen enjoins her in the shvua, and he says, if you didn't sleep with this man, everything's going to be okay. And then he continues in the 2 psukim later and says, B'shpia kohen et isha b'shvuat ha'Allah. The second pasuk says a shvua of an Allah, and I translated yesterday Allah is a curse, right? So one is a shvua. Generally, when we didn't get to Shavuot yet. But generally, when you have a shvuah, you basically go to a person and say, did you take it or did you not take it, right? You make a shvuah that you stole, you didn't steal, you made a deal, you didn't make a deal. It is establishment of facts, right? Allah is a curse, right? Where you basically say to someone, do you accept upon yourself someone who does this bad thing? Amen, right? You respond, I accept that curse on myself if I did that thing wrong. So one is a sort of a establishment of facts, that's shvuah, and one is where you critique or curse someone if they did something, if they don't accept a certain reality. So ask the Gemara on that context. Amar B'Zera Marav. Shnei shvuot amurah b'sotah lama. Why are there two languages of shvuah? So he said, well, it's because achad kodem shenimchaka megillah, achad lachar shenimchaka. One is that you make her make a shvuah before you erase it, and then one after you erase it. Says Gemara, Matkif Rava, that's not what the pasuk says, right? Because the pasuk doesn't talk about erasing them until both shavuot are done. Tervayo kodem shenimchaka megillah ktivan. They're both written in the pasuk before you erase the Megillah. So it could be that your drush is right, but certainly the context doesn't say that. Elamar Rava, what it means is that achat is a shvuah sheyesh imo Allah. One is a shvuah that includes with it a curse, essentially, meaning a enjoining of the person saying, you have to accept this reality, and then they say amen. The achat shvuah sheyesh imo Allah. One is just an establishment of facts. It just swear to us that you didn't sleep with this man. And if you did, you're going to get punished. We hold you accountable that you have to swear that you didn't do something wrong, right? So, hechidami, ask him, what's the practical difference? Hechidami shvuah sheyesh imo Allah. What is that? What is that kind of shvuah? Amar Rav, this is what you would say. We're the second to last narrow line. Mashbieni alecha. Again, this is a active reflexive term. If that's true, I didn't do a lot of grammar in my yeshiva, but I make you swear, all right, shalom nitmate, that you didn't sleep with the man, she'im nitmate, because if you did, yavo bach, you're going to have all these terrible curses. Amar Rava, well, that's two different things you just said. It's not a shvuah within Allah. That's Allah lechuda kaima, shvuah lechada kaima. You basically said, I want you to swear that you didn't sleep with him, and if you did sleep with him, you're going to get all these punishments. Elamar Rava, you should say it this way. Again, the second line, Mashpieni alecha, I am making you swear, I'm swearing on you, she'im nitmeit yavo, that if you actually slept with the person, you're going to get this punishment. Amar Vashi, well, that's an Allah, that's a curse thing. If you did it, you'll get punished. But Alaika b'shvuah, you didn't ask the person to establish any fact. Elamar Vashi, this is the way you have to say it. Again, these are just very nuanced terms. Mashpieni alecha shelo nitmeit. I want you to swear that you didn't become tamei. That's the shvuah. Ve'im nitmeit yavobech. And if you did, then you get cursed. So it's basically the same terminology, but that's the language you say that connects the establishment of facts, which is the shvuah itself, and the Allah, which is the punishment, the curse, if you are over against that shvuah. So that's what you would say according to Rav Ashi. And that is, according to some, the Rambam, I think, brings that language, similar language. Now, the end of the next pasuk was Amraha Isha, Amen, Amen, right? The woman says Amen twice. Question is, why did she say it twice? Says the Mishnah, 2 lines in the bottom, Almahi Omeret, Amen, Amen. Why did she repeat Amen twice? Why isn't once enough to say Amen? Says, well, because you made her swear 2 different things, right? You had a shvuah and you had an Allah. So it says the Mishnah, Amen al ha'Allah, she's accepting the curse, basically. The Amen al ha'shvuah, and she's saying Amen on the shvuah. Now, the Mishnah, although it only says Amen twice, the Mishnah keeps going. Amen me'ish zeh, she's saying Amen that I didn't sleep and cheat on my husband with this man who I'm accused of adultery with because I was seen being alone with him. But also Amen me'ish acher. She's also saying I didn't sleep with anyone else, right? Which she might not have even known about. Remember, a woman who's married who sleeps with someone else, even if there's no edim and she doesn't get punished, becomes usher to her husband. So she says this is sort of testing her, and the implication is that she would get punished and blow up, even if she had slept with someone else and not slept with this guy who she's accused of. Amen shelo satiti arusa unisua. Amen that I didn't cheat on you when I was arusa, which as we've learned really is marriage. Also, when I was not nisua, and shomeret yavam, and if she's a yavam, right? So remember, Ruvain marries a woman. Ruvain dies without children. Shimon then marries that woman. right? And Shimon doesn't like her so much, and they get into fights or whatever. He doesn't trust her, and he warns her, and she becomes a Sotah. And so Shimon accuses her of cheating on him when they were married. But she's saying, Amen, that not only did I not cheat on you when we were married, but I didn't cheat on you when we were waiting to get married, right? When I was a Shomeret Yavam, Uknusa, or after the actual consummation. So Amen, and furthermore, Amen Shalom Nitzmeti, I swear that I didn't do it. And if I did sleep with this person, right, then Yavobi, then I accept that this punishment will come on me. That's the Tanakama. Rameir says, not only that, but Amen Shelo Nitzmeti, Amen Shelo Etame. Not only Amen that I didn't do anything wrong, but I am promising that I will never do something wrong in the future, right? Now, the Gemara will discuss, right? What happens if she does, right? So the implication of this is that if she's a Sotah and then a year later she cheats on her husband, that she's going to be punished as a Sotah even without doing the whole process over again, right? That basically she's accepting that I was completely, had fidelity to you even in the future, and she will be punished in that time. Gemara entertains the possibility, which sounds a little far-fetched, that she would die at the current time if she was going to cheat on him in the future.
Would this mean he couldn't bring her a second time?
That's a good question. That's a different question. We will get to it today, hopefully. So the question is whether you can do it again. But the answer here is that, we'll actually discuss this more in the Gemara, but that she's essentially being enjoined by this Shvuah that she will never cheat on him. And if she does, even in the future, she will get the punishment of a Sotah at that time, right? She won't, of course, get it now, because if she got it now, she wouldn't end up cheating on him in the future. Just to point that out. The Gemara will point that out. Continues the Mishnah, third line from the top. Hakol Shavim. Now everybody agrees, meaning Rabbi Meir and the Tanakama, she'ein matnei ima lo, the ein matnei ima, that he cannot make her swear lo al mashakodim sheitares, not what happened before they got married, right? He can't use this as an opportunity to be like, I don't want you to have slept with anyone ever, even before we were engaged. That's nothing. It's not his business. She's allowed to do what she's allowed to do. And he can't prohibit her from sleeping with someone after they get divorced, meaning in the future, if there's no longer a marriage, right? It's not prohibited. So that's the first part of the Mishnah. The second part of the Mishnah, which gets to James's question, is nistira le'echad v'nitma'a, right? Let's say, this is a complicated case, she does stira, right? So she basically is secluded with a man who's not her husband, right? After she's divorced, right? She gets divorced, then she's with someone and she's nitzmate and she sleeps with him. And then the first husband remarries her, right? Which you're allowed to do. You're only allowed to do if she wasn't married. So she could sleep with someone. That doesn't prohibit you from remarrying her if you're Yisrael, but you can't sleep with her. You can't remarry her if she married someone else. Interesting halacha, right? Yeah. So Reuven's married to this woman. They divorce, maybe because he's suspicious of her. She sleeps with someone else. Then he remarries her, and then he says, "Wait a second, I don't want you. I'm making you a Sotah because I think you slept with someone else. She did sleep with someone else, but it wasn't while they were married, and therefore the Tanai does not go on that. Listen, the principle of the Mishnah is anytime where she can sleep with someone and that wouldn't make her usher to her husband, then even if he minds, right? He says, even if she lied to him, said, I never slept with anybody else. And then he says, I wanted you to prove that from the Shvuah of the Sotah. That's not up to him. That's not what the Sotah is for, right? It's not to settle scores. It's if it was an act that would prohibit her from being with him, then he can enjoin her on that in the Shvuah of the Sotah. So that's the rule of the Mishnah. Amar Rav Hamnuna, says Rav Hamnuna, important halacha, which we're going to see, we learn from our Mishnah, a shomeret yavam shezinta, right? A woman, again, Reuven marries a woman, we'll call her Leah. Reuven dies without children. Leah is supposed to marry Reuven's brother, Shimon, or do chalitza, but she doesn't. Or before she does, she has an affair with someone else. So she wasn't married to Shimon at the time, but she was zakuk to him. Obviously, she wasn't married to Reuven because he was dead. right? So but she sleeps with somebody else. Says Rav Hamnuna, you see from our Mishnah that she is prohibited to marry her Yavama, right? Even though she wasn't yet married to him, but she had the Zika to him. So it was a partial marriage, which we learned, of course, about in Yavamot. So Shomeret Yavam Shezinta, a Shomeret Yavam, a woman who's waiting to do Yibam, who sleeps with a person who she's anyone really. Asura liyavama, she's not allowed to then marry the Yavama. She would, I don't remember if she needs a chalitza or just goes free. I don't recall. She probably should just go free. Maybe there's a takana, I don't remember. So Mimai says, well, how do you know that? Midiktani, because it said in our Mishnah that a person who is Shomeret Yavam Uknusa, right? That a man who was a Yavam and then married his Yavama, so Shimon in this case, then made her into a Sotah, can add that time period before they got married into the Shvu'ah, right? So it said Shomeret Yavam Uknusa. Iyamr Bishlama Asira. If you say that if she had slept with someone during that time before they got married, she would be usher to him. Therefore, he can make her included in the shvuah. If she wasn't prohibited to him, then he can't say to her, "I want to include that in the shvuah of the sotah." How can he make a t'nai with that? The end of our Mishnah says, any person who, if she had slept with someone else and would not become usher to her husband, you can't say a t'nai with that. So therefore, since our Mishnah included Shomeret Yavam in the case where you can add a t'nai in the sotah, it implies that if a Shomeret Yavam's a woman who's Shomeret Yavam sleeps with someone else, she becomes usher to the Yavam. Ami b'marava, now in fact they said in the Marava that he's wrong. It's wrong. He's not correct. That in fact, a Shomeret Yavam who sleeps with another man does not become usher to do Yivam. What about our Mishnah? Elahadik what about what's taught in our Mishnah? Shomeret Yavam Uknusa. Our Mishnah agrees with Rav Hamnuna, but our Mishnah is wrong. And why is our Mishnah wrong? Because it's a dat yachid. It's a singular opinion, which is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. I'll have to mention Rabbi Akiva during the sphere, right? How many Rabbi Akiva? This is Rabbi Akiva. If you recall that we had in Yevamot, the general accepted halacha is that the only time when we say ein kedushin tovsin, that if someone marries a woman, it's not a marriage, is by chayve kritut or worse, right? Something you chayv karet or mita. But a chayve lavin, if a man marries someone who he's not allowed to marry because of lo taseh, right? A machzir grushato, for example, which is not say actually, but machzir grushato, right? Then kedushin is tovsin. Rabbi Akiva disagrees. Rabbi Akiva says, where I'm reading inside now, Hamani Rabbi Akiva, he da'amar ein kedushin tovsin b'chayve lavin. That kedushin is not tofes in Isser Lav. And so someone who marries a person that they're not supposed to marry just from a lotase, that is not considered to be kedushin, right? And so a woman who's not allowed to marry a man, or a man who's not allowed to sleep with a woman would be not tofes kedushin, right? And therefore their kid would be a mamzer according to Rabbi Akiva, right? Which we talked about. And also it would asser that woman to go back to her husband. But according to the prevailing opinion, which is not like Rabbi Akiva, only a karet would do that. And therefore a woman who slept with a man who she's only prohibited to from a lotase, like a Shomeret Yavam, she would not become prohibited to her husband. And her husband in this case is the person who's going to do Yibum. So therefore we disagree with that opinion. But our Mishnah does hold that, but our Mishnah is going according to Rabbi Akiva. Mashvila Erva. Boy Rav Yirmiyah. So ask Rav Yirmiyah another detail. So again, a husband, when he's making this t'nai to his wife, which really the Kohen does it, but I guess it's on behalf of the husband, we want you to swear that you have not cheated, you've not slept with this man, is what he says, right, with this person. She says amen, amen, to include not only have I not slept with him, but I haven't slept with anybody else. The fact is we added all these other things, the Mefarshim explained, because once we have a principle of Gilgul Shvu'ah, that once you require a person to make a Shvu'ah for something that the Torah requires, you can add things on that are in addition to that. So once a person says Modeh b'miksad, you can make them swear about not taking your money, you can add other Shavuot on top of that. So basically that's what we're doing to her. That the husband can say, okay, I want you not only to swear that you didn't sleep with this guy who I did stira with, you did stira with, but I didn't want you just ready to sleep with anybody, right? And also in the past, and also in the future.
She said that she's not a Sotah.
Then she doesn't drink. Then she becomes also a woman who walks in and says, I slept with a man, she gets divorced, she has no get, and the story's over, right? So, but it's a good question. So, boy, Rabbi Yirmiyah, what about the following case? What if a person wants to make a t'nai on nisuin harishonim, right? Or, which means meaning he married her, they were married, they got divorced, they got remarried. Now he did kinoi on her in the second marriage. And he wants to say to her, but what about, did you cheat on me when we were married 10 years ago? Right? He wants to bring in a different marriage between the two of them. Or what about Anisue Achiv? What if he wants to talk about his brother's marriage, right? So it's a case of Yavel, right? So basically, Reuven died. Shimon married his widow. Shimon now and her, they had a fight, and he suspected her of cheating. She became a Sotah. Shimon comes to say, you got to make a shvua. And he says, I also want you to tell me you didn't cheat on my brother Reuven. No, she could say, what do you care about your brother Reuven? What is that? It's not your business. So Mahu, Tashma says, well, Zakla, we said that's the principle. Kol shetiba el velote asura lo hayamatzna ima. Anyone in which, if she slept with that person, would not become usher to her husband, he can't make it t'nai. But both of these cases, she would be usher, right? Because if she came and admitted she cheated with him in their first marriage, she still would be prohibited to him. Ha yasira hachanami dematna shvamina. In both of these cases, she would be usher to him, and therefore you're allowed to make the t'nai. Okay. Which is interesting. Shvamina. Rabbi Meir Omer, now Rabbi Meir disagreed, and Rabbi Meir said that we not disagree, but he added the future. Amein shelo at tamei. I say amein, the woman says amein that she did not become tamei in the past, right? So, sorry. Rabbi Meir said two things. Amein shelo nitmeiti, I didn't do it in the past. And the second thing, which we're quoting now, is amein shelo at tamei, that I won't become tamei in the future. Says the Gemara, what does that mean? She'im mitamei mayim bodkin oto me'achshav, right? That doesn't mean, right? Sorry, Tanya, I have a brighter. Lo kisha'amar Rabbi Meir amein shelo atamei. When Rabbi Meir said that the woman has to say amein, that I will not cheat in the future, it doesn't mean she'im titamei, that if we know, God knows through Ruach, through the future, that she will become tamei mayim bodkin oto me'achshav, that she just drops dead now. Ella, of course, it means likishititame in the future, when she commits an act of adultery, even without kinoi or skira, mayim ma'arinota, the water will, arer means reinvigorate, come back to life, right? It's laying in wait inside of her, ubodkinota, and it will check her, which check here, of course, means punish her, kill her. Boy Ravashi, ma'osh yitna adam anusim ha'achronim. What can a person make a t'nai on his next marriage? Okay, meaning, so we said he can make a t'nai for so Reuven is married to Leah. I'm sorry, I picked the names. That Leah sounds bad in the story, but I picked it, so it's too late. Reuven is married to Leah. She becomes a Sotah. She didn't cheat on him, so she's innocent. But he says it also includes if you cheat on me in the future. So if she does in the future, she'll get punished, according to Rabbi Meir. What if he then divorces her 3 years later, and 5 years later they get remarried? Right? So can he say, I don't want you to cheat on me in a future marriage, right? They're planning it all out here. So what can you include that, right? Where my Rashi Mashi, it's now Adam Anisun Ha'achronim. Hashtamia lo asur. What do you mean? He's at this point, right? They're not asur. Oduma zimin de megarish lavadim mahatala. At some point, he might divorce her and bring it back. Tashma. So we bring a proof from our Mishnah. The Mishnah said, Hakol. I'm sorry, this is a Braita. Hakol shavin. Well, everybody agrees, and this is again similar to what we said in our Mishnah. Actually, is similar to our Mishnah. Shelo hayam matnai imo, that a husband cannot make a t'nai for his wife, meaning force her to be included with this case. Lo al kodem shetitares, lo al acher shetitgaresh. She can't do it. He can't do it before they got married, before they got engaged, and he can't do it for after they got divorced, right? Nistera. The Bach has a little bit of a different girsa here because he says v'tistater, right? If she gets divorced and then she gets stira, meaning she stays alone le'echad, and then titama. So he changes his whole girsa. The achar kach yachsirenu, right? So again, the case is the husband says to her, I don't want you to be with this person. He then divorces her, right? She never slept with this person. She then sleeps with the person when she's divorced, and then he goes back and he marries her. Lo haya matzneh, right? You can't make a t'nai for that period when they were not married, because it's her business to do what she wants when they're not married. The implication is, says the Gemara, he can make a condition that if you remarry me after I divorce you and then sleep with this person, you see from here that in fact he can make the t'nai for a future marriage. So as long as it's him and her, he can make the t'nai, right? And so only case where he can't make the t'nai is if they're not married at the time she commits the act, because there's nothing guilty about that. There's nothing wrong with that. They're not married. Now, continues the Gemara at the bottom. Hopefully everyone's got a little more. We'll finish the daf at least. Tanu Rabbanan. This is a very, very interesting and important practice. Says the Gemara, 8 lines, 10 lines from the bottom. The end of the parsha says, Zot Torah HaKinaot. This is the Torah of the Kinaot, of the jealousy. We don't translate really that, of the kinoi, right? Of the warnings and of the I guess fidelity between a man and his wife, right? Man and their wife. So the word Zot always tells us this and not something else. And Torah is usually the opposite, usually includes extra things, is more expansive, right? So it says, how do we understand what this is trying to tell us? Milamed, what this teaches us is Sha'isha Sotah v'shoneh, that a woman, right, can drink the waters of the Ma'im HaMe'arim and then do it again. Meaning, if the husband suspects her again in the future, you can do the whole process over. She drinks it and she's innocent. She goes back home. He still sees her hanging out with this guy. He still suspects her. It doesn't bring the love it's supposed to bring between them. He warns her again. She drinks it again. She's not. It's very hard for women to divorce, but
isn't she allowed to after?
So she can be shoteh v'shoteh shoneh. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no. Zot. The word zot is a limit, and the word zot tells you she'ein ha'isha shoteh v'shoneh, that she does not. There's no double jeopardy. Right? Once she drank and she was innocent, she didn't blow up, he can't accuse her again. Now, what does that mean? I'm Rabbi Yehuda. Maaseh, there was actually a story, the He'id Lefnenu, we heard testimony in front of us from the Chunya Chofer Shichin. The Chunya, the what's it called? Ditch digger, right? He used to dig wells. He was a well digger, which was a very important job back then. Right? So Nechunya, I don't know, I guess he traveled to all kinds of places to dig these wells. So he must have had a lot of good stories. He told us, Sha'isha Shoteh v'shoneh, that a woman can drink and do it again, become a Sotah a second time. The Kibalnu Eduto, we accepted his testimony that this is what the rabbi said, only b'shnei anashim, avalo b'ish echad. Only for a different man, not for the same adulterer, right? The same accused. So meaning that Reuven is concerned that his wife is having an affair with Shimon, and he warns her, and she says, I didn't sleep with him, and she drinks the mei sotah. He can't then make her be a sotah with the same person. But if there's a different person he sees her hanging out with, he can make her a sotah for that person. So that's only true about 2 different men, but lo be'ish echad. The Chachamim Omrim, and the rabbi said, no. Eina isha shoteh v'shoneh. A woman never can be made a sotah a second time. Bein b'ish echad, bein b'shnei anashim. Whether it's the same accused or it's another person, because we'll see why. Ask Gemara 1 second. The Tanakama said that a woman can do it twice. What about the word zot, which seems to exclude things? The Tanakama zot nami haktiv zot. Rabbanan Batrai, in the third opinion, which says she never drinks twice, nami haktiv Torah. Torat. It says Torat, right? I said Zot excludes, Torat includes. So Rabbi Yehuda is perfect. What does Zot exclude? That a man cannot make his wife drink for the same accused, but he can make her drink another time for a different person. So excluding one and including the other. What about the Tanakama and the Chachamim? Amar Rava, says Rava, it's a lot more complicated, because you are not thinking about the fact that a woman not only might be accused of sleeping with 1 or 2 men, but she might have different marriages. There might be different men accusing her of this. Says Rava, the ish echad ubo el echad. If it's the same husband and the same accused, the kuliyama lo pligi. everybody agrees, there's no double jeopardy, right? Once the husband, the isha echad is the husband, the bo'el echad is the accused, prospective person. The woman's the woman, right? Once she's been accused and she drinks and she didn't blow up, he cannot accuse her of that again. Now, of course, if there's witnesses, there are witnesses. But without witnesses, he can't accuse her, right? He can't make her be a sotah. The top line of Yutet, zot. It says the word zot. Let's say she has two husbands. Now, a woman cannot have two husbands, but she can divorce, or her husband can die, and she can marry somebody else. So a woman who is a sotah with husband A, with man A, and then her husband dies, the new husband, who might be suspicious of her, can also make her a sotah, but not for the same man, right? For a different person, maybe. So that's on top of Yutet. If there's shnei anashim or shnei bo'alim, if there's two husbands and two accused adulterer partners, I don't know how you call that, adulterers will say, she can be a sotah in her life twice. It's not like there's a one-time lifetime thing on being a sotah, right? She can be a sotah a second time. Dichtiv torat. That's the word torat adds that she can do it twice. Where do they argue? They argue if you have one of those two, either you have one husband, but two potential partners, so that the husband says, I think you're sleeping with Shimon. She becomes a sotah, she's innocent. Then he comes back and says, I think you're sleeping with Levi. Can he do that again? That's a machloket. Or if there's shnei anashim bo'el echad, there's the same, everyone thinks Leah is having the affair with Shimon. She's married to Ruvain. Ruvain dies right after she's a sotah. She marries Levi, and Levi says, I still think you're having an affair. So I want you to be a sotah again. So that's also a machloket. Tanakama savar torat is the rebuye kuli. The word torat includes that a woman can be a sotah over and over and over, except if it's the exact same man and the exact same husband. Zot lemute ish echad bo'el echad. And the Rabbanan Batrai, 5 lines from the top, the last shita in the Braita, Savri, the opposite. That zot is how you view it, lemute kuli. You exclude all the cases, right, from a woman being a sotah twice, except one case, torat. The word torat includes the rebuye shnei anashim shnei bo'alim, two different husbands with two different accused men. And Rabbi Yehuda says somewhere in the middle, zot lemute tarti. The word zot excludes two scenarios, and torat is the rabus tarti. It adds two scenarios. Remember, there are 4 scenarios, right? One scenario is the same husband, same accused. One second scenario is 2 husbands, 2 accused, and then there could be 2 husbands, 1 accused, or 1 husband and 2 accused. Okay, that's 4 cases. So Rabbi Yehuda says 2 are included, 2 are excluded. Zot lemute tarti ish echad bo'el echad. That if the same husband and the same accused person, she can't be a sotah a second time. Ish echad shnei bo'alim, and also if it's 1 husband and 2 men. So meaning what Rabbi Yehuda is saying is that 1 husband can never make his wife a sotah twice. You get 1 shot to accuse your wife. Once you accuse her and she's innocent, you cannot accuse her again. Obviously, if you have proof, but you cannot accuse her. Torat is the rabuye that she can drink twice if there's 2 husbands. Tarti, shtei anashim bo'el echad, either 2 husbands with the same accused person, or shtei anashim or shnei bo'alim, or 2 husbands and 2 accused. Either way, according to Rabbi Yehuda, a woman who was once a sotah and innocent can become a sotah again, but only with a new husband. And that is the 3 opinions about whether, in fact, she can be accused again. But to answer James's question, which I think was the question, the same husband can never make her a sotah with the same guy, with the same accused.
So I have a question. So if you have a woman who was made a sotah by her husband, and he dies, and she's supposed to be set up in Yibum with his brother, does the brother have the right to reject her based on that?
So the answer is yes. We discussed that before. I think we're going to have it again, actually. We discussed it in Yevamot, but I think it's a Mishnah later. It's certainly in the Gemara that she cannot do Yibum in that situation.
She can't at all.
She cannot do Yibum. The reason she can't do Yibum is because since she was not able to sleep with her husband, right? Until the Meso to clarify, right? So once you know in Stira, remember we put the messengers with them; they're not allowed to be together until you clarify. Since obviously we're not, well, this is another point. You can't clarify once the husband's not there anymore because you can't be a sotah without the husband being alive.
Right.
For a point. So she's sort of in limbo. I think she has to do chalitza misafek, but you can't do yibum in that case. And I think we're going to discuss it.
Okay.
I'll find where I know we discussed it before, but meaning before in the last year, but we'll come to it again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Shavua Tov, everyone.
Shavua
but
Tov.
even if she's innocent, the husband could just divorce her the next day.
Yes, but you have to give her a ketubah.
Right.
And she'd be very blessed, right? So you'd be missing out, but she may not want to stay married to him.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Shavua Tov, everyone.
So, good night.
Shavua Tov.
Good night.